Okay, folks, thanks for listening today. I'm very excited to have Bret Oliverio on the phone. Bret is the owner of Sup Dogs, and they were started in Greenville, North Carolina, and they now have a second location in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, two great towns. Sup Dogs is SUP, so if you were to go to the website, it's www.supdogs.com. And so folks, Bret and I already did this call earlier this week, and my recording app that I was using failed me and failed us, and so we lost basically everything but the first 3 minutes. So I'm going to kind of recount a little bit of the backstory around this restaurant, because it's a very it's an interesting and tragic and kind of heart-wrenching story, but also has a lot of positive outcomes. But Bret, you can kind of fill in where, whatever I may miss out here. But so basically, Bret's brother Derek started Sup Dogs back in 2008. Clearly a tough economy to do it in, but he was a 23-year-old, sort of with, just tons of inspiration and fire in his belly and passion for, this vision he had of starting Sup Dogs and turning, first this one location into a successful one and then growing it into a really successful business with lots of locations. And he knew, it was almost like, he just had this inspiration. He knew what he wanted to name it. He knew what he wanted to do with it, and had a really clear, focused vision for what he was going to do. And though he didn't, and here he is, so a 23-year-old, he borrows money from their dad, their grandfather, and he goes, and these guys all kind of get together, and they have several siblings, and all kind of pitched in to help get this thing kind of built out and started. It started, relatively slow, as a lot of places do, but, Derek really had this, this determination to make this thing work, and a lot of just sort of natural leadership skill sets and personality skill sets and work ethic skill sets that helped it thrive, which you need. And so, really was doing well. And around 2012, the place is just growing fast. And Derek very tragically died in a house fire trying to rescue his two dogs. And then, Bret was a newlywed, and he and his wife left their careers in Washington, D.C., had no restaurant experience, but came down to take over this restaurant and turn it into the success, or to continue the success that it had started and has continued with since then. So a really long intro by me. In fact, I'm going to put a link to an article that Derek sent me in the show notes so you can read more. But Derek, does that? It's like hard because I don't want to, summarize something that's. That whole story is like a podcast in itself. But
right. Now I understand. It's a little. Yeah, you about nailed it. I would say the one thing I would sort of stress from all that is, our family didn't have a lot of money. So there's sort of a misconception that you need a ton of money to start a restaurant. My little brother borrowed, some money from my dad, who took a home equity loan out, and some money from my granddad, and they sort of just had blind faith in my brother, and my brother's sort of laser-focused, crazy, bullheaded, confident personality where he knew he wanted to open Sup Dogs, the coolest specialty hot dogs, specialty burgers, beer, liquor, the coolest, most fun restaurant there is in a college town. And he was able to pretty much nail that. So, but yeah, you kind of summed it all up. And if you just Google Sup Dogs, the story, it's been in a bunch of newspapers, from the Washington Post to local papers. So yeah, that's kind of what happened. We just got that nightmare phone call on September 29th, 2011, and I was getting ready to go to my job working radio in Washington, D.C., and phone rang at 3 a.m, and there was a house fire. He went in, while the house was on fire. I mean, who goes into a house while it's on fire? I mean, my brother does. I would never do that, but he's, that same sort of confidence and passion he had in opening the restaurant, might have, that was his personality, So he went in after his dogs, and you always have enough oxygen to go into a fire. You never have enough to come out. So if anything's ever on fire, anyone listening, just stay a million miles away from it. So luckily there was no burns on his body. Just passed away of smoke inhalation. And at that point, getting back to the restaurant stuff, the restaurant was doing well from a standpoint where people were coming through the doors, the revenue was there. But sort of like me, when my brother started this when he was 23, he really didn't have a ton of restaurant experience. I mean, he waited tables, but when a restaurant sort of grows faster than you can have a handle on it. I mean, at Sup Dogs, what Derek said went. And like a lot of restaurants. And the restaurant kept growing, so it's hard to sort of manage the restaurant as it grows. It's hard to do it all. So, when he passed away, it really is a testament to his staff that they were able to keep it going and sort of there's 4 months between he passed away and my wife and I moved down to Greenville, North Carolina. So it is a testament to the staff that they were able to sort of keep the restaurant going.
Yeah, I mean, there's like so many. It's amazing. I mean, when that happens, it's just there's so many aspects of the story. It's like I don't know, man. It's like meant to be that you guys are gonna, continue his dream and be successful. Like it's phenomenal. It's like I don't even know where to start. But I mean, there's so many questions I have. Like, so you have well, first of all, he had a skill set, and I know, like, so it takes that mentality, and as you said, that sort of that bullheaded, I mean, not delusional, but then again, like, I believe, like, I'm an entrepreneur, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs, you almost have to be a little bit delusional in the sense, like, you just have to ignore, what might be very legitimate doubts that people might surface about, hey, what you're doing or whatever, and just believe in yourself. So he had this certain skill set, and he had gotten several years down the road where the restaurant's really successful, and then you come in. So there's a couple things I want to get to. One is, like, what did you do right away? So I want to touch on that. I also want to touch on, what skill sets you all shared, and then what different strengths you might bring to the table that may have ultimately, he may have had to have found somebody with those skill sets too. Because there's one thing,
right.
there's starting a business and having that fight, and then there's like the growing and consistent operational strategies you have to deploy over time as a business thrives. So there's a lot of times we have to bring in other people that kind of balance out certain strengths and things that we may not have.
Sure.
So, but first of all, you come into this thing, and so you've got this incredibly emotional thing that's just happened, a tragedy beyond words, and now you are going to run a restaurant, which you have had no experience doing. So what literally, like, what did you do? Like, walk me through, like, you got there, and for the first week, months, whatever, like, how did you get up to speed, and what were some of the things you did to, to figure this all out?
And I'll give you sort of a brief timeline. I mean, he passed away in September 2011, and then my wife and I actually got married 3 weeks later, and then we went on our honeymoon, and then we were kind of like, by around Thanksgiving, we were kind of, what if we, moved down to Greenville, quit our jobs and down to Greenville, North Carolina, with the hopes of, carrying on Derek's legacy and his dream, but at the same time, I want to make a lot of money. I mean, that's what it's all about. So, but, like you were going back to saying, so actually let me back up with the timeline. So then I worked in sports talk radio in Washington, D.C. I was executive producer of a morning show. I also did a bunch of on-air stuff, TV and radio. My wife worked in sales. We actually broadcasted from the Super Bowl in Indianapolis, February 2nd, I believe it was. And then on February 4th, 2 days later, the moving trucks came from our place right outside of Washington, D.C., and we moved down to a random college town Greenville, North Carolina, right across the street from ECU. So that's kind of the timeline. And, back to what you were saying about my brother, I mean, he was able to make such a cool restaurant and, make it popular with the students. He had the type of personality where, every guy wanted to be friends with him and every chick wanted to hook up with him. I mean, that's just kind of how, it's just kind of how his personality. He was always the funniest guy in the room, the best looking guy in the room. So making that restaurant awesome was easy for him. Now, there's also the business side of things, which is controlling costs, labor costs, food costs, liquor costs, managing a staff, that sort of thing. It wasn't really his strong suit. So, there was a lot of sort of, even though we did have a great core of staff there, the operational side of things when I got there was sort of in disarray, which you would expect. So, yeah, we showed up in early February, 2012, my wife and I. So, would you want me to get into sort of the first couple weeks when I got there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just fascinated with that. I don't know what I would do.
I had no idea. It's zero. I didn't even know how to tap a keg. I didn't know anything about the restaurant business. My wife, luckily, she has been waiting tables her whole life, in and out of college. She went to the University of Florida, and she's worked in restaurants, so she sort of had an idea from a server standpoint. I had no idea, and my mentality was, I'm just going to move down there. I'm 33 now. I was 30 at the time. My mentality was, I'm just going to outwork everyone, outlearn everyone, and ask every stupid question there is. I'm going to be the biggest village idiot for a long time, but eventually I'm going to be better than everyone. That was kind of my mentality.
Gotcha. I love that mentality.
Yeah, and I remember just asking our food distributor, and the beer reps, liquor reps, going to a food show for the first time. I mean, I just remember asking the world's worst questions to the point where these people are like, wow, this idiot, he's out of his league here. So, that was kind of my mentality. And I remember a few weeks into it, I just came home one day. I remember this specifically, and because when we got there, my wife, she was like, look, we'd established a life and a place to live. She was like, look, just give me a month. I'm going to turn this apartment. We rented a small apartment. We're going to turn this apartment into a home. We got to establish a life here. So give me a month to do that. She's like, you go in and work, try to figure out whatever you can. And I remember coming home one day and be like, I don't know if I could do this. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. And, the restaurant was running and there was a lot of people in there, but I knew I had a sort of an idea that it wasn't running optimally, but I didn't know what to do or where to start. She just said, look, stop being a wimp. Go in, walk around, talk. You'll walk up to tables. You'll know immediately if they want to talk to you or not. And just talk to them. Ask them if they need anything. Get a refill. Run food. Do whatever you can to sort of just be around and talk to people. Talk to the staff. So I said, okay, I'll try that. So, over time, I think it took about a year for me to really sort of have the confidence to run the restaurant. But it was definitely tough and it was definitely weird. And, I thought, worst case scenario, my wife and I hate it. The business fails and I guess we move back to the DC area. It's kind of, what was running through my head at the time.
Well, it seems like you had the right mentality, which is like, okay, I'm going to check my ego and just ask, as you said, dumb questions. Just the basic stuff, and really work hard to learn it. So, which is, a really good way to approach it. And then so over time, you started to learn things that, you needed to carry on things that worked. And then I know the other day we were talking, and one of the things you started realizing is, hey, how can we operate better, right? Like, how can we go and find cost savings, not because you want to cut costs necessarily to cut costs, but cut costs to, make the business more profitable and serve, like you said, I think, better fries that may cost less and things like that. So talk about how you started to uncover some of that and what were some of the things you found and what you did about it.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest nightmare would be to be incredibly busy in the restaurant business and not making any money. I mean, that would be a total disaster. I'd rather just sit at home and do nothing, I mean, you work your ass off. There's a ton of people in your restaurant, and there's no money to show for it. I mean, that would be a total nightmare. And it was a little like that when I got there because the restaurant was always busy, but there wasn't a lot of money in the bank account. I think our menu was a little underpriced. Our labor costs were a little out of control. Food, beer, liquor costs needed to be sort of reined in. Stupid stuff. I mean, I'm all about, even over 3 years into this thing, I'm all about every day, how can we improve, but at the same time, save money, cut costs, because saving money is like making money, right? But I never want to be one of those restaurant owners that are just cutting costs just to try to save a dime. I want to be improving
you can
while
tell
we're saving.
that, go ahead.
Well, yeah, and here's an example, and this sounds really stupid, but we have a couple specialty hot dogs and our nachos and burgers where we put jalapenos on them, right? So everyone knows what a pickled jalapeno is. It's like that sort of dark green jalapeno that you get out of the jug. Yeah. And to me, this just didn't look that good, and I don't know. I mean, people like the way they taste, but I was like, hey, what if we switch to a fresh cut jalapeno, cut it ourselves? It's brighter, it's better looking, it tastes better, it's more fresh, and then lo and behold, it's like 40% less expensive than if you just buy these jalapenos out of the jar. So, we were able to switch to a fresh cut jalapeno, improved our food, and cut our costs. And there's always 1,000 ways to do that. But you really just got to dig and sort of figure out how it relates to your concept. And I've been able to do that in a bunch of different ways. So it's just one example.
I mean, I know so you came in and really started to figure out portion control, right?
Yeah, when I got there was no portion control. Just the processes were not really in place to run a successful restaurant because you can't do it all. At one point my brother was cooking the food, running the food to the table, greeting the customer. Doing it all. Just total mom and pop shop. But then as the restaurant grew, it starts to get out of control. The processes aren't in place. And you just don't have the time, and it kind of swallows you up. And I think there was a little bit of that going on with my brother, which I guess is a good problem to have, right? Too busy, too many customers. But so when I got there were a lot of processes that needed to be in place. And by the way, let me mention this. I swear to God, one I requested to be on your podcast so people know, I'm a fan of everything Schedulefly does. And when I got to within the first month of getting into the restaurant business, I bought your book, Restaurant Owners Uncorked. That's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
I have it upstairs. And I read the whole thing because, it was all about successful restaurant owners. So for me, I was like, well, I got to figure out how to act like one. So let's read about the dude from Top of the Hill, Scott. Let's sort of see how other restaurants owners act successfully, and let me try to be a part of that. So your book was actually the first one that I bought. I don't even know how I really stumbled upon it, but it helped. It definitely helped. So I still have it.
Thank you, Amazon. Amazon does a good job of marketing that because we just don't, it's there and you can get it, and they cross-sell it easily. And there's not a lot of books about, there's like books. This was the interesting thing, not to get off on a tangent, but it's going to tie back to this. So I found that, like, you'll find books that's like some guy or some gal is real successful, and they go, oh, well, here's how I've been successful, so I'm going to write this book, and here's my story. Well, okay, that's really good, but then you go read somebody else's story, and it's totally different. Like, they did things totally the opposite way, maybe, but they were still successful. So it was interesting because I thought when we started that, I was like, I've got to find, like, common themes. Like, what are they all doing that, is similar, so that we can kind of say, like, put our stamp with this book and say, well, here's 20 owners, and here's what all of them do, these 5 things. But you can't do that. And that's what was interesting, and this is why I like doing this podcast and why I like hearing your story, and you probably went through this process. It's like you can learn nuggets from lots of people, but everybody has their own way, and then you kind of have to mold your own style of, like, I agree with this guy on the way he does that, and this gal on the way she does that, and this person, and then here's how and you kind of, like, come up with your own way of doing things, because building a successful restaurant is very hard, and what part of what makes it so hard, I think, is that there's so many components to a restaurant. There's the food, there's the labor, there's just so many unique things that you deal with. And there just isn't a right way to do it. I mean, you have to be smart, but my goodness, I've got I interviewed a guy recently who, one person is sort of top down. This is the way to do it, and do it my way. It's kind of my way, the highway. And another guy was like, I have sort of a general framework, and I trust my staff. I mean, it's so weird. So, what did you?
Yeah, I think it's all about personality. And that's been the hardest part for me is, like, sorry to cut you off, but
no.
It is all about personality, and you sort of have to implement your style. I don't think there is any one correct way to operate a restaurant. I've met a lot of restaurant owners where they do my way or the highway, and then you have a lot who are way too trusting and lenient. I'm kind of somewhere in between. My personality is, I do have a harder time delegating. If I try to, like, want to do everything myself. And now that we have a bunch of full-time managers and general managers, I've gotten a little better at delegating, but it's something that I'm working on. But for me, even going into this thing, keep in mind, if you saw our restaurant, especially the outside of our restaurant in Greenville, you'd be like, this looks like an abandoned gas station. I mean, this place looks awful, right? I mean, we're attached to a convenience store. I mean, it just looks, it's not very impressive on the outside looking in. So one thing that was really important to me getting into this is, I'm going to move to this college town. There's girls everywhere, beer, liquor everywhere. I think it's easy to get caught up in trying to be cool and trying to run a bar, and there's all sorts of things that go along with running a restaurant, a bar, with the dark side of restaurants with the booze and a lot of times drugs, and there's cash everywhere. I mean, that can swallow you up. But my mentality was, I want to run this like I'm running Apple. I mean, it sounds stupid, but I'm going to run this, tiny restaurant in Greenville like I'm running a Fortune 500 company.
And what do you mean by that? Like, I think I understand, but tell me what you mean by that.
Yeah, like I wanted I wanted a legit restaurant with all the processes in place. Everything from holding staff accountable to, literally every dollar we bring in, we report. And I've been told I'm crazy, but every dollar that comes into the restaurant gets reported to our accountant, and we pay taxes on it. So I want to run this like any other successful company, not just a restaurant. I wanted to make it successful, but I sort of have a bigger vision than one restaurant in Greenville, North Carolina, even though it's awesome and I could live off that and be perfectly happy the rest of my life. But so what comes along with that is running 100% legit business, not just a restaurant, but a legit business. And I think a lot of times in college towns, in different areas, like, Charlotte, D.C., it's a little different. But when you're in a college town and you have an independent restaurant and there's girls everywhere and beer and cash, there's a lot of opportunity to sort of get sidetracked. But you really have to focus on, even though this is a fun restaurant with college girls everywhere, this is a legit business that has to operate in a certain way and, has to make money like any other legit business. So I hope that makes sense. I'm not sure.
No, it definitely does, and I love the mentalities. And so you had the one, and so you got up to speed and got to where you kind of felt like you had your arms around it, and then you opened your chapel. When was that? About a year and a half ago?
Yeah, we opened 9 months ago, and when I moved down to Greenville, there was so much that I had to learn and so much that I wanted to improve and change, and from a business standpoint, that the thought of opening a second restaurant didn't cross my mind for a long time. Just because there was so much to learn and sort of accomplish in Greenville. And so, my wife would tell you, we didn't talk about opening the second one for maybe a year and a half, 2 years. And then, we started kind of thinking about it, and we started, sort of talking about where we would want to open a second one. And it was always my brother's dream to open as many Sup Dogs locations as possible. The easy
college
thing
towns, is it like a college towns concept, you think?
Exactly, yes, college towns. And, the easy part would be, open up another Sup Dogs in Greenville and, sort of do it all locally. But, we decided, let's look around, and we found an awesome building in Chapel Hill, right on Franklin Street, right across the top of the hill. And it was one of those things where it kind of just hit us, like, I don't know if we can't pass up on this space. And then so we started contacting, and the process of sort of starting a second restaurant, it's not easy. I mean, especially when you find a prime location, and we knew we wanted to be in an awesome downtown area in a great college town. And, there's very few college towns better, if any, than the University of North Carolina. So when we found the building, then the next step was, okay, how can we convince this broker and landlord to lease it to us? Because they wanted Bank of America in there. They wanted some Mexican chain, or, they wanted, these Chipotle, but that's where it really helped running a buttoned up business when trying to open that second one. All of our accounting was right. There was money in the bank. We sort of, there's a lot of restaurants that try to start even their second location with, their accounting's a disaster. There's no money. It's taking out money to go buy a boat and no money in the bank. But we were able to, keep a lot of that money in the bank, and sort of, so that helped when opening a second restaurant, being able to show the broker and the landlord, hey, we got a little bit of money. Hey, here's our balance sheet. So it really helped in expanding, sort of running a legitimate restaurant.
And so this gets to what the point you were making about, running it like Apple, having a button-up business. You mentioned a great example. You just said, you just kind of threw it out there, but I think it's a common mistake from what I learned over the years. You said, taking money and going and buying a boat or whatever versus plowing it back into the business. So this becomes the question of, like, is this a hobby or is this a business? And
totally.
And it's, there's no right answer, but you kind of have to answer that question for yourself. And you guys said this is a business, and that's one of the things that, and you mentioned Top of the Hill, you mentioned Scott Maitland, the owner there earlier on here, and he's on the podcast too, folks. Listen to him too, but he's always said to me, there's the business of what you do, and there's the business of the business. The business of what you do is the serving the food and so on and stuff that happens, in the restaurant. And then there's the actual running the business, turning a profit, like you said, cutting costs, knowing your labor costs, getting those down to, getting this stuff down to a science so that it's something that you can not only, is sustainable, but is replicatable if you grow. And it sounds like that's something you already had. You had you had been to business school and you had business experience, but those are some of the important lessons I've learned, at least, and correct me where but that seems like a really important piece of a business. Even if it's a hobby, you kind of need to really, it's a restaurant, but it's a business, right?
You just have to have a bigger mentality than I'm going to be one of those restaurant owners who's at the corner of the bar drinking Jack and Cokes and glad-handing people. I never drink inside the restaurant unless I never eat or drink, really, unless I have family or friends in town. They all want to go to Sup Dogs when they visit, and not what I want to do, but they want to go in there and have a beer and one of everything on the menu, so I sort of partake in that. But what I say is, look, is this party time or are you running a business here? Are you trying to make $1 million? That's my mentality. And for a lot of restaurant owners and bar owners, it is party time. You got, you're drinking beers with your staff. You got $5,000 in cash in your pocket. Hey, let's go on a cruise. Let's go to Las Vegas. But when we moved down, I knew we wanted to have a bigger vision than just one restaurant. So we took a huge pay cut and taking over Sup Dogs. And for me, it was not all about how much money is in my bank account. I didn't really care, just as long as I could pay bills. I wanted to keep score by seeing how we could grow our restaurant's bank account. And that helped a ton in, being able to get a little bit of loan money from the bank for our second location, establishing financing. You've got to make sure all your financials are legit and in place, or there's no chance of expanding. And we were able to do that. We weren't out buying boats or houses or cars or, we really just had the business in mind first.
Well, so then when you had a lot of this in place, so it helped with expanding to the second location. It helped with convincing brokers and landlord and so on. What about what about how did that work with you? So I'm always curious. So when you've got one place and you've got your 100% of your attention focused on that, and you go, okay, I've got this thing running. It's clicking on all cylinders. I'm ready to, we're ready to grow. So then you go find this place in Chapel Hill. You go through that process. Now you've got two, and not only two. You can't devote all the attention to one, but two that are, an hour and a half apart or whatever. So it's not just, I can spend half the day at one and half the day at the other. So talk a little bit about that and what that process has been like and how you've been able to, now juggle two balls, so to speak, versus just one, and make sure that you don't lose sight of the one for the sake of the other.
Yeah, it's really hard, and it's a grind, and having one restaurant is not easy. Having two is twice the headaches, twice the risk, and we bought a house here in Greenville, but we've also, for the last year and a half, have an apartment in Chapel Hill. And what's big for us in our concept is we got to be a part of the university. We got to become a great part of the downtown area. So, I knew I didn't want, people ask me all the time, oh, is this a chain? They walk, especially in Chapel Hill, where they're a lot less familiar with our concept. They'll come in, oh, is this a chain? And I kind of take that as a compliment because you know, to them maybe it looks like there's processes in place to look like a chain, which I guess is cool. But you know, for us, I wanted to be local, and it's important in markets like Chapel Hill. It's like, you know, if you're not a part of their community and you're not a part of the university, I don't think you're going to stand much of a chance unless you're Chipotle, Panera, you know, somewhere like that. But so being there day in and day out, you know, I'm probably in Chapel Hill 3 or 4 days a week. I'm here in Greenville 2 or 3 days a week. You know, really, I take 0 days off. And, you know, I might, you know, I go out to dinner with my wife. I mean, you can't really have any hobbies. It might sound miserable, but it's not. So you really have to be focused and be a part of the community in each of your restaurants. So, you know, right now in Greenville, it's like I'm always texting with the mayor. You know, my wife's on the board for Uptown Greenville. So we're super established in everything that goes on in Greenville. And we're slowly getting that way in Chapel Hill. And it's not easy. Can't be in 2 places at once. But I want people to know this is a local restaurant. I mean, my dad, he just turned 68 yesterday. He'll come down and pack hamburgers for us. So, you know, that's what I say. Because, you know, there is a mentality that, if you're not part of the Chapel, like Top of the Hill is part of the Chapel Hill community through and through. And we need a little bit of that in order to sort of be a part of the community. And, you know, I tell people all the time, hey, I live here. I literally live in Chapel Hill 4 days a week. You know, it's me and my wife. We got a ton of employees, but, I mean, by no means is this a business where we're opening up and sort of forgetting about it and, okay, well, where's the next one? It's not like that. It's really getting in there, grinding, getting to know your customers, getting to know other business owners, getting to know the city, go to all the meetings and, you know, everything that sort of goes into being a part of a community.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And you guys are really taking the right approach for sure, particularly in that community. I mean, I know Chapel Hill, but really, I mean, I would think any. So then, so you're there half the time.
One thing I wanted to touch on, and I apologize for interrupting. I think this is important for other restaurant owners. You know, you really have to stick to who you are. I know who we are, okay? We are specialty hot dogs, specialty burgers, cheesy tots, cheese fries. We are here for the college students, you know, just high energy, loud, bright, fun. You know, we open up in college towns, okay? College is fun, right? So our business is going to be fun. I want it to be the most fun. It's unorthodox. It's different than any restaurant. You're not going into Red Robin. This is like, you know, awesome food that you're not going to, you know, I mean, it's not fat-free, but awesome food, awesome drinks. You know, it's half restaurant, half just exciting party. I don't know. It's a cool concept, but you got to stick to who you are. And when we first opened up in Chapel Hill, you know, our building looks awesome from the outside. We put a ton of money into it. I mean, it looks awesome. So it was weird. I think people were expecting, I don't know, some crazy upscale burger bar with, you know, 45 craft beers and, you know, Maker's Mark on the shelves. And so it took us a while to find our audience. And, you know, there's a pressure to sort of conform to the norm and conform to, you know, what other people are doing, but you really got to stick to what you do. And what we do is for the college students, and we make no bones about it. But that's hard, you know, especially when you move into a market where nobody knows you. There's tons of pressure to conform. But you got to stick to you got to know who you are and really fight and stick to who you are. Otherwise, I don't think you have a chance to be successful if you're opening a second one.
Yeah, and you know, it's I think it's great advice, Bret. Which is, I mean, we believe that, you know, very much at Schedule Fly too. It's you have to, you know, almost draw the line in the sand and say, look, this is who we are, what we're all about, who we are here to serve, and you know that will then automatically it will turn off some people because they're not, your core audience or whatever, but maybe more importantly, it turns on, the people that you really want to serve and are there to serve. Like, who your natural audience is, what you all are all about. And so it's I would imagine it helps you really draw a more rabid, sort of loyal customer base in a lot of ways. Would you agree with that?
Totally. And it takes a long time too. We've been open for a little over 9 months. I feel like I'm just starting to, in Chapel Hill, we're just starting to really find our audience and our customer base. There's a lot of people that came in and we don't have a hostess. It's loud, it's bright. All of our servers are college girls. We are a little edgy, but nowhere near Hooters or any of these crazy restaurants. But we're different than anything in Chapel Hill, and so it takes a long time for just to build it. Just to build your brand and stick to your guns. I mean, tell you what, it's tough though. There are days where you're taking a beating. But in the end, I think if you have, all your processes in place and your product is there, I think you're going to be successful. And I believe in what we do, and I'm going to work as hard as I can possibly work. And to me, that's the recipe for success. But wow, there's a lot of pressure to be like everyone else, and I have zero interest in doing that. It's definitely a battle and a grind that, sort of what we do every single day.
Well, look, so the thing about that is that man, I'll try not to go too far on a rant here, but you're really nailing it, man. I think you have a lot of really natural business savvy around things that, like, look, Bret, because there is that pressure. We all feel it in business, and it's the thing about it is, then everybody's the same. And I'll tell you, I'll recommend a book to you and anybody listening to this. It's one of my favorite business books I've ever read, and I read a ton of them. But again, they're all kind of the same, except for this one. Ironically, it's called Different, and the book is titled Different, and the subtitle is Escaping the Competitive Herd, and it's written by a marketing professor at Harvard, and Youngmi Moon is the name of the author, and she talks about how important it is to take that stand and to be different. Not different for the sake of being like, let's do weird, silly stuff to get attention, more around like at your core, like finding your belief system and not following what everybody else does. And a great example that she uses, it's really easy to remember, is she says, like Volvo owners like what their car is, but they see friends with a Volkswagen that have this, and this feature that Volvo doesn't have. And so Volvo does market research, and they go, oh, well, we should add these things. Volkswagen owners like their cars, but they, have these things that they don't have that Volvo has. They do market research, and next thing you know, you can't tell the difference. Now, those may have been not the right brands, but the point is, like, so many cars are like kind of the same, and then they eventually all become very similar, and it's hard to tell the difference. And then she talks about how, like, Mini came out with a Mini Cooper. When that thing came out, there was like nothing even close, and it developed this rabid base of fans who were like not only like buying these things in droves, but very proactively spreading word of mouth for them. Like, these things are great, we love it. So, right, but that's what, I just believe that to my core, that if you really want to create something special, you have to go about it that way and stick to, what you believe in, and not care if there's people that go, well, that's not, you should do this or that or whatever. Sorry for that,
yeah,
man, but I believe that so fundamentally.
I totally agree. And I think that applies to a lot of that applies to what we're doing. That's what I was saying about, college is the most fun time in your life, right? So I want to be the most fun restaurant that's out there. for the past Duke game, keep in mind we're on Franklin Street. There's a lot of money on Franklin Street. A lot of businesses that have been there for years and years, and a lot of old money, and a really just cool community of people that eat, breathe Chapel Hill and UNC, which is awesome. But before the last Duke game, I was like, you know what? I want to hang a 22-foot banner. So I printed a banner that's 22 feet long and 6 feet tall. I mean, it's absolutely enormous. I want to put it across the entire front of our restaurant that says, honk if Duke sucks. So, and that's the cool part about running your own restaurant, because I can do that. And if you don't like it, sorry, tough. What are you going to do? Complain to me? I mean, that's what it is. This is my idea. I think this is something that's cool and fun and edgy and different, and will create reactions and get people talking. And so that's what we did. I went and printed this enormous banner that you could see from a mile away that's a Duke sucks with Coach K's face on it. People are honking all day, taking selfies in front of it, posting on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all that stuff. And, so you kind of have to take chances, know who you are, and especially if you're in business for yourself, I mean, do what you think is best. And if people don't like it, oh well, there's no one to answer to. That's the awesome part.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and so you, so some of the things that you mentioned, which I think are just, just really interesting and good, knowing your audience, knowing who you are, knowing what you want to do. Like, so you told me on the last one that you guys, like, you don't have giant hot dogs. You have 6-inch hot dogs. You have thin hamburger patties. And part of that is because I think you said, like, your primary or ideal audience, or who you're really thinking about when you put together your food, your menu, is like a 20-year-old female college student. Like, that's you. Is that right? Did I remember that correctly? Yeah. Talk about that and why, because I think that's such that's smart, because the guys will follow too. But tell me about why you all approach it that way.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to know who your audience is, and I think one of my strengths and my wife's strengths, and she's right there with me, is sort of knowing what college students in a college community. Don't get me wrong, this is not our restaurant. We get a ton of families in for lunch, ton of families in for dinner. Late night is absolutely insane. But I mean, so it's not just college kids that come into our restaurant. We get a ton of families with young kids, but it's when you think about college, and when I think about college, to me it's all about girls and having fun. So that's what our business has to sort of be all about. Like you mentioned, our hot dog is 6 inches long, but it's not too thick. It's not like you're eating some big giant hot dog at the stadium. Our patties are hand-packed, fresh, hand smashed. We smash them out real thin. They're still a third pound, but we smash them out real thin. To me, it's a little easier for a girl to eat it. I don't think a group of college girls is going to want to eat a big giant piece of cow before she, goes to a house party with their friends, or so everything we do is sort of with the college girl in mind. Everything from our drinks to the presentation of our food, to decor the restaurant. And I think if you can, for me, my mentality is if you can be successful doing that, the guys will follow, the community will follow. Because, if I visit a college town, I want to get a college experience. If I go, we went to University of Florida a couple of years ago to, go to a football game, and I wanted to see my wife's whole college experience. So I wanted to be around the students. I wanted to be around the crazy. So when you complain to me that the restaurant's too loud, it's too bright, it's too many girls in there, I get complaints. Oh, your staff is they act like sorority girls. Oh, well, this is college. I mean, what do you want? We're 50 feet from the university. So, I saw one Yelp review. Some guy was like, the food was great and the service was good, but their staff is, they're laughing and they're loud and they're having fun and they're acting like this isn't the sorority house, girls. This is work. And I'm thinking, well, this dude just doesn't get it, So, I think one of my strengths is knowing what college kids and people that are in a college community want to be around. So.
Which is back to your point of really knowing which, so that guy is not he's just, you're not going to please everybody. That's okay if you stick to, what you want to do and what you believe in.
So what my dad says is, my family really doesn't have, my older brother helps, but my family doesn't really have much input day to day. But I tell him stories, So a lot of times I'm going to my dad, I'm like, Dad, listen to this complaint. And with complaints, 99.9% of the stuff I hear is positive, and I love it. But what my dad always says is, if there's someone that really doesn't like being there or doesn't, it's like having a remote control, You can turn the channel if you want, right? You don't.
Yeah.
So there's always other options, but you're not going to be for everyone, that's for sure.
Yeah, there used to be like this mentality, like the customer is always right, but I think that's like kind of to a point because like we try to like I don't know, man. I'm sure there's some overlap. The way between like maybe how we might approach business to schedule a flight, or if the same group of guys if we were running a restaurant, which would be like I want to make everybody really like I want to provide great service and a great product. But sometimes there's people that just refuse to be happy or whatever, or they don't like what you do, or they came to your hot dog and burger restaurant and are complaining because you don't have, a fresh salad on the menu. You might, but you know what I'm saying? Like, eventually you kind of just want to go, this isn't the best place for you. Like every now and then somebody might say, well, you don't have this feature in ScheduleFly. And you kind of say, well, look, there are other providers that do, and, you would be happier there. And to me, it's almost better if I will be happy to refer somebody to somebody else, our competitor, if I think they'll be happy there, because then what happens? They're happy, and I'm happy. Because I don't have an upset customer. Like, isn't that better than like, oh, well, let me try to go out of my way to add something to please you, and then all of a sudden, what am I? I'm not different because I got the same stuff as everybody else, and I can't, so. But it's
I always, the customer's always right thing. I mean, if we make a mistake or we're in the wrong, I am over the top apologetic. I'll do anything I can to make it right. But my mentality first and foremost is to side with our restaurant and our staff. Because most of the time they know what they're doing. And those are the people you are working with day in and day out. So I really side with our staff first. But if there is, and stuff comes up, and there's if we mess up a ticket or the ticket time's 30 minutes or whatever it is, then I'm the first one to apologize, and I know when we're in the wrong. But there is something to be said about sort of sticking to your business and your staff and your beliefs. So I agree totally.
Well, so one thing that you all do is I wanted to ask you, but we haven't talked about this, but there's a video on your homepage of this annual festival you have in your parking lot there in Greenville called Doggy Jams. And I mean, like, I watched the video, I was like, oh, I would really like to go to that. It looks so much fun, and you have clearly a ton of freaking people. Well, I want to talk to you about that. We may try to, but so did you start that? Did your brother start that? And talk about like that starting, what it was like at first, how many people were there, and then like how many you'll plan on having next month, and are you going to do that in Chapel Hill, things like that, because it's clearly a great. Folks, like, they get a huge number of people there for a day, and it's a great thing, I'm sure, for your brand and a lot of fun, too. So talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, my little brother Derek came up with that. It was his brainchild, his name, Doggy Jams, 'cause it's Sup Dogs, and it first kind of started out the first 2 or 3 years that he did it. It was kind of like a jam band / hippie-ish sort of vibe to it. And I remember the first year I got there. I got there in February. Doggy Jams is always in April, and I didn't know what to do. So I just had one of our cooks book some random bands, and But the following year, I'm like, look, I want to make this an awesome mainstream, the biggest party for the students each year. And so what we do, it's an outdoor, almost music festival where I hire like an awesome cover band. We have drinks, beer, sell hot dogs, we do a hot dog eating contest. We have, just a few carnival games, some shuffleboard. But what it turns into is just an awesome, like the most fun outdoor concert party you've ever been to. Last year we had almost 2,000 people, like 1,870 or something people there, and then this year we're expecting a lot more actually. So it's a huge marketing thing for us. I mean, putting on an event like that, between permitting costs and police and security and a sound guy and the band and staging, I mean, there's so much that goes into it. It costs a lot of money to put that event on. And we do make a little bit of money off it, but for me, it's a marketing thing. I want people to think of us as just the most fun place you could ever go to eat or drink. And don't get me wrong, we're selling 70% food. 60, well, right now it's probably about 66. But in Chapel Hill, it's a little more. So we are a restaurant. But, when you come into Sup Dogs, I want you to just have an over-the-top awesome time. And part of that is doing a few big events a year. And Doggy Jams is certainly just, a huge event that we put on that, and it's just our staff putting on the event. I mean, a lot of these big concerts that get thousands of people and events, they bring in a whole production company. And I'm lucky because I put on big events when I worked in radio. So I had an idea of how to do them. So and this is kind of a microcosm of the business as a whole, being able to take what my brother started and make it kind of mainstream and as fun and big and profitable and cool as it could possibly be. And this is kind of an example of that. I took my experience in radio and putting on big events, putting on a Super Bowl broadcast or a spring break party broadcast in radio in DC, and sort of transferring that to Sup Dogs and our Doggy Jams event. And I think it really is just a unbelievable fun event. All my family and friends come, and I mean, it's a total work day for our staff, but I think the people that show up just have a blast.
That's awesome. What a great idea.
I mean, it's honestly, it's a really, really cool event. And it's not just for college kids. We get a lot of, like, college girls bring their dads to it, locals that community. I mean, the mayor was there last year. He comes, stops by. It's a really cool signature event.
So you mentioned, I definitely I want to talk to you more about that.
Sure.
When we get done, because I might. Now you mentioned though that so it's expensive. Like, is there any advice? Like, if somebody, like, maybe they saw your video and they listen to this and like, okay, maybe we could do something similar. Like, what are some, like, just top of mind pieces of advice you would recommend? Like, would it be, hey, be careful, you could spend a lot of money real fast, or what are some things?
Yeah, putting on a big event like that, you got to keep the community in mind first, because all it takes is one person in the community to say, you know what, the juice isn't worth the squeeze with this event. Let's just shut it down. Let's not approve it, because there are approval levels. The local government, your neighbors, sound permits, the ABC commission. I mean, you really got to do this thing buttoned up. If you think you can just go outside and throw a huge party like you're throwing a frat party, it doesn't work that way. And I mean, you just got to run it like you're running any other big time event. I mean, our whole staff at the mandatory work day, none of our staff is drinking whatsoever. Obviously, you got to make sure everything's planned out, timed out right. You got to make sure the stage is coming before the sound guy, and the sound guy is coming before the band and sound check. And then, how many cases of beer do you need? Something stupid like, okay, well, do we have enough ice to ice down all these beers? There's a lot of logistical things that go into putting on such a huge event. And you can keep in mind at the same time, like Saturday in April, this event's like at 3 p.m., so our lunch is going to be crazy. So it's like you're trying to do everything. The night before, we're going to be, it's a Friday night. It's probably going to be crazy till 3 in the morning. And then lunch is going to be busy, and then you got to transition into this monster event. And you really just, there's a lot that can go wrong, and you just really have to sort of plan against that. But it is really cool too, because our it's almost like a bonding event for your staff, because it's party time for everyone else during Doggy Jams, but for our staff it's work, and our staff takes pride. And what I tell, and our staff talks about this all the time, is like, we are a part of people's college experience, and we don't take that lightly. When you come to ECU, and it's starting to get that way at UNC, Sup Dogs is a big part of that college experience, so we always have to be great. And if we're not, we're going to affect some girl's college experience, and I take that pretty seriously. So Doggy Jams is the same way. This has become part of the university and part of the semester for these students, so it's got to be perfect every year. And it is a bonding event, because once you do an event with 50 staff members and there's 2,000 people there, and the band's rocking, and everyone's drinking, eating, having a great time. It's a pretty cool feeling, even though it's exhausting.
Okay, so that actually brings something up, because you mentioned, several times. Clearly you have a great staff, and you're very proud of your staff, and they do a wonderful job for you. You mentioned that you're part of the college experience for people at ECU, and that you all don't take that lightly. I get that as an owner. I totally get that. And I get why you would think that way, and why you would believe that, and why you would understand the importance of that. How do you get your staff to think that way? How do you find people either that think that way, or how do you train or help people understand, what they're doing, and not just coming and bringing hot dogs out to people?
Yeah, it's more than that. And, I always tell our staff is we have to be the best. And I sort of try to instill that in them. I always try to tell them that we are the best, and we have to be the best at everything we do. I think believe it or not, we're doing hot dogs and burgers and cheese fries, but I think it would be tough to find a restaurant that puts as much effort and time into presentation. And it's kind of ridiculous if you're in our kitchen and you see one guy correcting another guy because he didn't drizzle the ranch right on the ranchero dog. It sounds stupid, but all that stuff's really important. That goes into taking pride and doing things the right way. And I tell our staff a lot, like, look, there's a right way to do things, and then there's a gray area, and we got to be out of that gray area. We got to do things the right way every single time. And to be honest with you, it just takes time, and we're starting to develop that in Chapel Hill. We're starting to develop that pride in your staff. You're starting to see less turnover, because at first that's rough. We started our second location. Certain staff members didn't really have pride in the concept. They didn't care about working. They didn't really care about the restaurant. But over time, you sort of figure out who your key players are. And what's helped a lot in Greenville is ECU is being really popular. So people inherently take pride in working at Sup Dogs. And then our staff is paid pretty well. Our girls make a ton of money. Now, they work their ass off for it. I mean, nobody works harder than our servers. So making a lot of money goes along with that. And working so hard, everyone's working. I mean, some of these days are just, I feel like I'm running a sweatshop some days. I'm not kidding. It's just so hard and so intense. But along with that comes pride and sort of a sense of accomplishment every day. And, I try to pay our cooks and our managers as much as I possibly can. We don't have anyone making minimum wage right now. That includes our bus boy and dish guys. And so I think it just takes time to sort of build that pride in your staff. It's not going to happen overnight. We're getting there in Chapel Hill. In Greenville, we totally have it. People are, I got, dozens of people that want to work at Sup Dogs every single day, which is awesome. So I hope I answered your question. I'm not sure.
You did, and I think there's just I always ask that question. I'm always just fascinated by that, and it's not easy. It just takes, like you said, it takes time, it takes leadership, it takes, truly believing that yourself and showing that and just rewarding people that, that live by that creed, I guess. And then, I always feel like it's like, the money thing too is interesting. It's like, gosh, if you just treat every customer like they're your best friend, right? Like, how would you treat your best friend when they walk in here? Like, how would you interact with them? And if you do that, then they're going to tip you better and you're going to make more money. It's like really not that complicated.
Yeah, right? It's easy. and I tell our staff that our restaurant's so small in Greenville. Yeah. When I said, look, our servers, our girls on the floor, you're the face of this restaurant. So if you fail a test, if your boyfriend broke up with you, that's got to stay outside the restaurant. Because when that customer walks in, the first thing he's going to see is your face. Do you look like you're having a good time? Do you look like you want to be there? That's instantly going to affect the customer experience. And then also being able to deal with all sorts of different people. I tell them you're going to have one table. It's going to be a grandma and a granddaughter who just came from church. The next table is going to be a group of construction guys. The next table is going to be the fire department. The next table is going to be the 21st birthday. And the next table is going to be a group of frat guys who want to go crazy and take shots and high-five each other. And you got to be able to adapt to all of them and make sure each one of them is having the best possible time.
Yeah. Not easy to do sometimes, but it's necessary in your business. Well, so then the last thing I want to ask you about is, and you mean you're only 9 months into Chapel Hill, but like big picture, long term, you talked about making this concept really a part of the community and knowing the community. So now you're spending half your time Chapel Hill, half in Greenville. What do you like? How do you grow? Do you grow more? And if so, how do you keep that up?
Yeah, that's a really tough part. I kind of don't think about it that much, to be honest with you. My mentality now is making sure our Greenville location is as great as it's ever been and only improves. I always want to get better. Our UNC location, I want to make sure we're established as a member of the community, and it's as profitable and is running about as well as it can. So my wife and I talk about it like, oh man, people ask me all the time, where's the third location? I'm just like, this is so damn hard. It is so freaking hard. But I don't know, 2 years ago, I never would have thought we could open a second restaurant. My wife and I talked about it. We're like, oh my God, it'd be impossible to do a second one. How could we possibly do a second one when we have this one that's so crazy and busy and insane every day? But somehow we did it. I don't know. So I don't know. And the weird part about it now is we actually have college towns that are universities that are like trying to recruit us. I get these pitch emails and phone calls.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Random building owners that come in, and because I think our concept and what we do brings a lot to a college community. It's exciting, it's fun, it's edgy, it's different, but at the same time, we're really trying to do things the right way. And I don't know. Maybe we open a third. I don't know. Maybe we just have two, and I'm perfectly content with having two the rest of my life. And maybe one of them fails. Maybe both of them fail. I don't know. I to be honest with you, I don't take every day. I don't take for granted that people are coming through the door. I know it could go away. In my mind, I'm like, this whole thing could go away tomorrow. I mean, and I think about it a lot. Is this as good as it gets? Like, is can we only go downhill from here? So every day I'm working to try to get better and to really just try to stay out front of ourselves. I don't know. It sounds weird. I don't take for granted that we're making money and we're busy and we have a great staff. I don't take that for granted because in my mind it could go away tomorrow. But and that being said, look, we have 1,000 issues. I'm dealing with 1 billion staff issues right now. I'm dealing with food distributor issues, and I mean it's not all roses. I mean I'm out here. I'm fighting for money and staff issues and this and that. So it's not all roses. Trust me. It's a total grind. But I don't know. I'm trying to figure out.
I gotta tell you, but like so you said, you're in your 30s now, early 30s.
Yeah, I'm 33.
Yeah, man, dude. So I'm 40. So you have a lot of wisdom that takes a lot of us a lot longer to to achieve. And the interesting thing is you said something. And actually, it's one of the guys that was in our book. His name is Dave Query, and he's a really successful restaurateur in Colorado. He started in Boulder. Now they've got places in Denver and elsewhere. And he's got a restaurant group with 10 or 12 locations or whatever. But he said to me when I was interviewing him for that, he said, here we are. What is it, like 15 years later? I always feel like it could all end tomorrow. Like, and I think that's such a wise mentality, which is like never taking, like enjoying the success and recognizing it, but then never expecting it to. Well, not expecting. You expect it to continue, but never thinking that it just will continue if you don't keep doing what you've been doing, which is, like you said, running a button-up business, grinding it every day, taking nothing for granted. Because as soon as you take it for granted, then it could be gone. So that mentality, I think, is why you'll continue to succeed. Why, if you open another, you'll do well. Like I really believe that. So
thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah. You guys. So hopefully you'll be in. You've been down here a few years. I don't know if you ever spent much time down in Wilmington, but I'm not there. I'm in Charlotte. We've got 3 of our guys are down in Wilmington, and UNCW is down there, and Wrightsville Beach.
Yeah, I hear a lot of everyone's telling us we got to open there.
Yeah, man, go to Wilmington and Boone if you're going to do it. And those are 2 really good other college towns, but I won't. We can talk more about that offline sometime. But man, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this, because you do have a daily grind and you have a lot of issues. So I'm going to let you roll, but this is awesome. There's so many great pieces of wisdom and advice that will come out of this for anybody that listens. And so thank you so much for doing this and for contacting us, man. Like, that made my day when you did that. And I'm so excited we were able to put this together. And
I really appreciate it. And I just want to say a couple of things. Like, the transition for us from a mom and pop restaurant to, like, people on salary and 401k, and we were using Microsoft Excel not that long ago, until one of our girls who used to work at a different restaurant was like, I use a ScheduleFly. It's great. We should try to use it. And what you guys do definitely helped us in becoming, at least me feeling like we're more of a legitimate restaurant company, because now all of our scheduling is done online, everything's tracked online. It cuts out a lot of headaches with staffing. So your product really helped us sort of becoming legitimate. And obviously I told you your book helped me when I read it. So I appreciate what you guys do. And another thing I want to say is, like, I've been doing this, 3 years and 1 month. Like, I might come off sounding like I know I know a lot. I know I don't know hardly anything compared to most people. And I look at a lot of restaurant owners, like Scott from Top of the Hill, like a lot of these restaurant owners that you interview, they're like way ahead of me. And like, I don't feel like I know everything. I might try to come across that way to our staff, but I know there's so much that I have no clue about. And I look forward to learning that. So I don't want people to think I'm some know-it-all, because I know there's been people in this business for 20 years, and they know a billion times more than I do. So I just wanted to say that.
You know what, man? And that's really cool of you to say that. But this is another example of why people that have been at it for 20 or 25 years that listen to this would say, I guarantee it, they would say, he has the right mentality. Like, in other words, you don't think you know it all, which is critical. You don't have the ego. You don't, feel like I know, I know how to do this. I got this, or whatever. It's a constant learning process. One of the guys I interviewed, he said something that I wrote this quote down, and I really liked it a lot. I thought it was fantastic. He said, Will, every good restaurateur is a student of the game. It's like, well, you guys are in Chapel Hill, and you had the Duke Sucks sign, and I don't like Duke either. But I admire Mike Krzyzewski, and I feel like he's always been a student of the game. So is Dean Smith, so is Roy Wood. Like, great coaches are like, they never stop learning, they never stop adapting, and they may have to learn a new generation of players and how to coach them or whatever. But you're always learning, and you're never, you never have it all figured out, right? Which is the mentality.
Yeah, I mean, I found some. I don't really want to get into it, but I found something out with our food distributor like a month ago, which I'm like, made me feel like an idiot. Like, wow, I don't know anything. I should have known this.
Oh, yeah,
2 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every day I find things out like that.
That's awesome. Well, hey, man, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And
no
I'll follow up with you too, because I do want to talk to you about Doggy Jams. So we'll catch up about that sometime here in the next week. But thanks so much, and folks, thank you for listening very much, and stay tuned.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
All right, man. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.